Welcome to 3 Yards Per Carry, a podcast covering the Miami Dolphins and the NFL. Now, here's your hosts, Chris, Alf, and Simon.
And we're on, and welcome to another edition of 3 Yards Per Carry. I'm Alfredo Arteaga. I have Chris Kaufman here with me. I will have Simon Clancy later on this week, as we'll have a special episode. But first, Chris, the Redskins win. The Bengals win. But the Dolphins essentially kicked the crap out of the Eagles for an entire second half, and they also win. And I don't know. I hate to say that they're firmly entrenched in a spot, but I think number 4 is the best they can do. Your thoughts on what's transpired this
the
week?
Best they can do, like the best that they can do for the season is, depending on what we're talking about, is going to be like 6-10.
No, I'm talking about draft position. I think 4.
Yeah, I don't.
It's
It's going down from here. It's not going up. That's unfortunate. I mean, they listen. The tie break between them and the Redskins is so tight. It's strength of schedule, and it's super duper tight. One game could really flip that at any given.
Washington has it right now.
They have it right now, but
and it's .005 in strength of schedule.
But it's a matter of we have a basket of opponents and they have a basket of opponents, and so if theirs starts winning a game or two more than ours, then all of a sudden it's it flips. So that could flip any time, but the problem is that Miami's not done winning, and maybe Washington is. So that's really what you've got to worry about, because Washington played Green Bay and Philadelphia and the Giants, so they could win that game against the Giants, but then they play Dallas. Mm-hmm. At this point, it's good that they play the Giants, because either Washington or the Giants are going to get a win, but the Dolphins aren't done winning. I mean, compare that schedule. Think about those teams that they play versus Miami having a last 4 of the 4-8 Jets, the 2-10 Giants, the 1-11 Bengals, and then the Week 17 Patriots, who I understand they've lost home field advantage, or at least they've got the home disadvantage in that tiebreak with the Ravens right now. But what happens if Week 17 they have wrapped up a bye week, but it is either impossible or highly unlikely that they can get their home field back from the Ravens by Week 17? Then what's going to happen? Well, they're going to pull all their guys by halftime or something like that, if they play them at all. So we could be playing the New England backups in Week 17 because they have their bye week, but they can't get home field, and so the game doesn't matter. So 4-0 is not out of it's ridiculous, but 4-0 is not out of the question. 3-1 maybe even should be considered the favorite outcome for the last month. I certainly think 2-2 seems like kind of a minimum the way they're playing.
The saving grace is this: Cincinnati starts Andy Dalton. They all of a sudden look good yesterday. I wouldn't say good, but they look like a competent football team. They look like a team that can beat us. Problem is that's in Miami. The game is in Miami. And I don't know if a Zach Taylor team is going to be all that interested by that time, while a Brian Flores team is probably going to be breathing fire by that time.
Yeah.
Okay. The Giants, Daniel Jones, decent rookie year, but their running game is in the toilet, and that's what we were banking on as far as beating us. I'm thinking a little bit worse than that, okay? I'm looking at a real possibility at falling out of the top 10, and I'll tell you why. If you look at some of the teams that are behind us, is Atlanta done winning? I think they are, because they're thinking about shutting down Matt Ryan, because they've already shut down Julio Jones, essentially. Okay, they're 3-9. They have the same record as we do. They just have a stronger strength of schedule. But we can win games. Atlanta could just lose out or lose a couple more, and they jump us. Detroit is suddenly tanking. Now, are they a danger for a quarterback? I don't know. They've lost 5 in a row, and they keep losing in every fashion possible. Okay, so I don't think they're in on a quarterback because it's really expensive to get rid of Matt Stafford. And the last we saw Matt Stafford 5 games ago, he was having a great season. He was headed for, plus 100 quarterback rating, 30 touchdowns, he almost 5,000 yards. He was going to have a really good season. Arizona.
No, I think that's a wild card because I think Matt Patricia could want his own guy. I think he could want his own quarterback. I do,
but it's kind of
especially based on which quarterbacks have been his choices as Matt Stafford's backup, and sort of the makeup of those guys. They're not Matthew Stafford. They're not built like Matthew Stafford. And I think that sort of belies what Matt Patricia really wants. And I think they're headed for a breakup.
Well, it'll be expensive to get rid of Stafford because I believe
Sure.
he has a pretty chunk coming to him. But maybe they work out a trade, and I think that's a guy that would have a lot of trade value out there. Some team that feels they're a quarterback away, they might feel pretty good about that. Arizona, forget it. Kyler Murray is, if not rookie of the year, he should get consideration, so they're not a danger. Then it comes to Jaguars, who are 4-8 and look like they're not done losing since they're going back to Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew might give them a pop, but are they 5-11? Are they 6-10? That's going to put them right there with us. I think the Jets are going to finish ahead of us. I think the Chargers are going to finish ahead of us. I think Denver's going to finish ahead of us, and that's where it ends. So I think that we have pretty much the 7th pick locked up. Let me ask you this question.
Consider this though: 375, 6-10, 375 right now. Where that percentage would stack. I mean, just do this the simple way: is like number 12 or number 11 in the league. So
yeah, but this year's a little bit different because to finish 11th or 12th, we had to finish ahead of Philadelphia.
Well.
Ahead as in more wins than Philadelphia. I don't know.
No, I mean Philadelphia is 5-7 right now, and they have a 4-7. They have a 4-17 record. So they're currently 12th, right? So if we were a 375 record of 6-10, we'd be 11th.
And would they have a tiebreaker over Philadelphia just by merely beating them, or
no, that doesn't figure into it. Philadelphia does have a lower strength of schedule, but so I mean, Philadelphia is 5. They're presumably heading not toward 6-10. Philadelphia is heading toward 7-9, based on what their current run rate is, their win rate. But if we're 6-10, we'll be ahead of them, but we'll still be at number 11.
Yeah. So what do you think is the worst case scenario? As I handicap it, I see the 7th pick as the worst case right now.
The worst case scenario, as in like the lowest draft position, like the I do absolutely believe that we could be picking number 11 or I think so. Look, they were 0-4 in the first quarter of the season. They were 1-3 in the second quarter of the season. They've gone 2-2 in the third quarter of the season, and now they spend December, which, by the way, that's the time when typically the defenses in New England have kicked it up a notch. Is as they get into the final 4 games of the year, and if they're doing that, if they're on that sort of track, then the schedule is permitting. I mean, it's Cincinnati, it's the Jets, it's the Giants. These are terrible teams, and I mean, not just bad, but terrible. And then possibly the New England backups. We'll see what happens there. So yeah, 4-0 is not out of the realm of possibility. So 3-1 is probably, like I said, it's probably the favorite. So that puts us 6-10. 6-10, I think, could easily be the number 11 pick or the number 10 pick in the NFL. It just depends on how things shake out. So yeah, that's worst case scenario. I think absolutely it's a possibility. Now what you'd have to say is that Miami, they've shown that they can beat bad teams. They beat the Jets clearly. if Ryan Fitzpatrick had played the entire Redskins games, I'm pretty sure they would have won, and not by a tiny margin, not by a 2-point conversion at the
I think
end.
they would have killed them.
Yeah, I think they would have won. So they showed that they could beat them. But at the same time, the Chargers are kind of a bad team. They they did not have Derwin James at that time, and they had some injuries, and yet they doused us. So and if you look at what the Cleveland Browns did, I mean they're not a great team either, and they certainly beat the hell out of us. So not perfect. So these three teams, one of them could jump up and beat us because we're just not a very good roster, and that's the way it goes. And if the New England Patriots are actually playing for something, then that should be an easy win for them, especially as it kicks right into their go time of the year, or when they're the best.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at that, then you're looking at like 2-2 and a 5-11 record. And at that point, 5-11 record, I would say, is probably going to be good for, like you said, number 7 or something like that. So yeah, that's a decent possibility. It's hard to imagine them at this point imploding and going, worse than that, worse than 5-11, unless there's an injury to Ryan Fitzpatrick. If there is, then 3-13 is in the offing possibility.
Yeah, they're finding ways to do things with with guys off the street, and yesterday there's
nothing else to do to them. I mean, how can you strip them any more than they've been stripped?
This reminds me of, did you see the movie Major League, the first one?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and she keeps taking things away.
Have you seen Major League?
She takes away the team plane and has them flying around in a little crop duster. And then she says, "Well, I guess we're coddling these guys too much." And has
they put the boat engine. They put the boat engine in the tub.
Yeah, because they didn't have a cold tub anymore. Yeah, it's like, I don't know what else they can do. They can't do
exactly. What more can you take away on this team aside from Ryan Fitzpatrick? And that's it. And if you take away Ryan Fitzpatrick, like I said, then maybe you are looking at a 3-13 team. And that won't be good for number 1 overall pick, but it could get them even conceivably number 2 overall pick. So
it was a surreal. Let me say it was a surreal experience yesterday. I usually watch games with the same people, and I've told you who they are. And there's Cowboy fans there. And watching that game yesterday, and watching these Cowboy fans hooting and hollering at every Ryan Fitzpatrick completion, and me just blankly staring at the screen. It was completely surreal, because they kept telling me, "You guys are gonna pull this off. You're gonna pull it off." And I'm like, "No, we're not. Trust me." And when it was 28-14, it looked that way. Then an avalanche befell the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'll tell you what. I was on the road. I was on the road back from Outer Banks, North Carolina, and I knew I'd been trying to see. This was the point of the trip when I was driving, and I had checked and saw the 28-14, and I was like, because it was kind of close at first, and then I checked that, and I was like, okay, well, here's the point in the program when they start, the better team starts running away with it. And later, my wife started checking the scores and was like, "Do you want an update on the score?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And she tells it to me, and she's like, "The Dolphins are winning." I was like, "What?" It's like, yeah, I think it was something like 32-28 at that point, or something like that.
Yeah, and then they
I was like,
up
"That is you read, honey. This is nice, but you read that wrong." Like,
no, not only that, they iced the.
Thanks
game.
for trying to cheer me up, but
yeah, they iced the game on the Eagles. Okay,
yeah,
all right. That Hail Mary at the end of the game, that really wasn't very necessary. I think that was a failure in coaching. I think, to ice away the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Okay, because they left a little bit too much time, and then they allowed that completion, and then that set up the, and they shouldn't have allowed that completion, by the way, but that set up the Hail Mary into the end zone. But
It
the
was close
Dolphins,
though, the Hail Mary, wasn't it?
yeah, it was. If there's a picture, and I believe it showed up in the Miami Herald today,
Mm-hmm.
where Alshon Jeffrey's arms are under the ball,
Mm-hmm.
but Chris Lamon's arms are above
Mm-hmm.
above his
Yeah,
arms
right.
catching the
I mean,
football.
it was
So
close. It was,
if Lemons is not there, I
Mhm.
think Jeffries catches it. You know,
yeah, it was
but
pretty close. And well, the Indianapolis game was close. And this is the thing about this season is these weird wins. Like, if you're being honest with yourself and you're taking off the rose-colored glasses, and you're kind of looking at it and you're like, this bad team, stripped roster, they come up with wins against Indianapolis and against the Philadelphia Eagles. They should have been, I think, what were the Eagles favored by in this game? Like 10, something like that? And
no, it had
Indianapolis,
dropped. It had dropped
it was
considerably.
at least 9.5 or something like that.
No, it was 7. It was 7.
It was 7?
Yeah, and then it had dropped to 6.5. So I guess some people started betting that.
Wow, that was a really last minute drop then.
Yeah, let me get I'll get you the actual composite lines in Vegas.
When I had checked it, it was something like 9.5, but that was, I guess, earlier in the week. But yeah, anyway, I mean they're clear. I have closing odds at -10 or -10 Philadelphia. So anyway, but yeah, so this was supposed to be, these are good, better teams, and Miami somehow comes away with the victory. And you see the other team playing sort of poorly. I mean, Philadelphia played poorly from what I've seen of the game, and I've seen most of it now. But Philadelphia really played some poor football in this game, and Miami took advantage. And obviously, DeVante Parker went off. Mike Gesicki went off. Lots of good things happened on our side, but man, they played like shit. And Indianapolis played like shit too when we won against them. And at the end of that game, it was sort of like, who wants it less?
Here are the composites, all right? Here are the composite lines for Caesars Harris, and these are the movements all week, okay? Every number that I give you is 2-day intervals. -10 Philadelphia, -10, -9 Philadelphia, -9.5 Philadelphia, -9 Philadelphia, -8.5 on Thursday, -8, -8.5, -7.5 on Saturday, -7, -7.5 at kickoff. So I guess there was resistance right there at -7.5, which, I guess it got down as low as -7. So I guess a lot of Miami money came in during the week, especially from Thursday on.
It refused to cross that, and that threshold.
Right back to 7.5.
That 7 to 6.5 is a huge cross. But then, so I think the point though is that if you're kind of being objective about this, it looks like the pattern of trap games. Teams that think they're better, but aren't really awesome. It's one thing if you have like a team that's like 10-1 and something like they're at that point, a team like that is good at not falling into trap games, right?
You just get caught in it.
But a team that's just over 500 or around 500 and thinks they're good, thinks they should be better than they are, they're facing a team that's supposed to be one of the very worst in the league. Those are the teams that get trapped. Those are the teams that fall for it, that eat the cheese. So I think that
should know a little bit about that.
Absolutely. You're damn right we should.
Do you remember the Dolphin team that was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a Super Bowl favorite? Do you remember how they started the season? Losing to
are we talking
team.
Are we? Yeah, this is
the Texans.
This was the Texans. What was 2001?
2003 or 2?
2. I wanted to say 2002, but that was like, I thought the Texans were there before 2002.
And Andre Johnson ripped us an ass.
Yeah, that was terrible. But anyway, So the trap game is a thing in the NFL. Everybody knows it's a thing. And if you're being objective and you're not being like a Dolphin fan, you're wondering, I wonder if Indianapolis and Philadelphia fell into the trap a little bit. Like they kind of showed up to those games a little lackadaisical and not really locked in. They clearly played some poor football. And that's where I sort of wonder about, because everybody's like, well, this is such a great sign going forward. It's like, This is such a unique season, though, because one, it seems like every worst team in the league somehow ended up on our schedule. If we were like a 500 to playoff team, we'd be, well, shit. The Buffalo Bills are 9-3 right now, so
Yeah.
and they have basically our schedule. So we have a hell of a schedule, a hell of an easy schedule this year. All the bad teams ended up on our schedule somehow, and then B, you have a coach that has absolutely nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing to lose at all. Nobody expects them to win. Full job security, guaranteed job security. And so he's calling games like it. I mean, hell, we just had a punter throw a touchdown to the kicker.
I've kept looking for it. I don't think it's ever happened in NFL history, and nobody can find another instance.
I can imagine that it has not, but so you have a coach calling these games like he has zero fear of losing,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a really kind of easy schedule, and then you have some other teams falling for the trap game thing against us. And so I wonder, like, okay, let's fast forward to 2021 when we have a more expensive team, higher expectations.
Yeah.
Is Brian Flores going to call the games the same way? Like, is he going to call that fake field goal, the fake punts, and the onside kick to start the second halves, and stuff like that? The 2-point conversion to save overtime against the Redskins. Is he going to do that? I don't think he should. Be honest, it's one thing to show up at the roulette wheel when you have nothing to lose. It's another thing to actually play roulette where you have, the mathematical disadvantage when you do have a lot to lose. So is he going to call the games the same way? Are we going to have the same schedule? Are teams going to fall into a trap against us if we're better and we have higher expectations? Those are the real questions, and that's why it's like, don't read into this yet. This is nice. This is what's happening is really good coaching, and we should be happy with it. But don't read too far into it yet, because the conditions we're seeing in this season are so unique compared to what we're going to experience in future seasons.
Yeah, what I don't understand is Philadelphia, you got to assume that they're sitting around having their Thanksgiving dinner, and like everybody else in the NFL, I'm pretty sure you're watching Dallas play. And you're watching Buffalo annihilate Dallas in Dallas on a short week on Thanksgiving Day. And you got to be thinking to yourself, my God, we're playing the Dolphins on Sunday? What a gift we have just received. And then you go to Miami and you lose. And not only do you lose, but you get boat raced in the second half.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Like, I don't get that. Like, I don't understand that.
They're good.
They're good at the gift of gifts.
They did. They blew it.
And if there's two teams that absolutely despise each other, it's the Eagles and Cowboys. So, you got to think that they came down here wanting to kick the crap out of us. And by the way, I don't know if anybody's noticed or not, but we called the zero blitz sometime in the second half, and Nelson Aguilar was wide open once again, but once missed him and had to throw it away because he was under pressure from Vince Beagle. So when people talk about, that zero blitz that didn't go so well with the Steelers against the Steelers, it actually went okay this time. Although I would advise that we get that out of the playbook, because this one should have gone for like a 60-yard touchdown. Yeah,
that's. I mean, they had some other issues with it. I mean, they had an issue with it. It was not as it was kind of was a zero blitz in as much as like there wasn't deep help. It was supposed to be all man, and that was how they scored that first touchdown to Miles Sanders, the running back outlet pass.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to be all man. It was supposed to be all man, but Hardage didn't get the memo, and so he didn't go out and cover Sanders, and instead he doubled the guy over the middle. And that was supposed to be man coverage. That was technically zero coverage because it was all man, I think. And he was supposed to run out to that side, I think, pre-snap and go get Sanders or spy him or something.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was.
But a lot of good things have come out of this little run that they're on, and namely, it's two guys on the offense, and one guy on the defense that we got to acknowledge. He just signed a 3-year deal, Eric Rowe, and you were mentioning today on Twitter that the deal is actually pretty friendly because he's only guaranteed $7 million if all the reports are correct, and which means they could just get rid of him after 1 year if he's doesn't work out. But he's been good in this role. The other two guys that look like they're here as contributors and kind of important contributors, and that's DeVante Parker. He is back. And, of course, Mike Gesicki, who's kind of on fire.
Yeah. It's scary. We were talking about this earlier, but Mike Gesicki, if you really look at it, and you kind of get a better understanding of what you're seeing it now because you're seeing some of the plays that he's making out there. If you get a better understanding of what is actually open for him, what if he's one-on-one, how he frees himself up, what kind of leverage he has and stuff like that, and how you can get him the ball. You can get him the ball high and take advantage of the defensive leverage. If you understand all that, then he could be getting the ball a lot more. And he could be given a lot more chances to make the sorts of plays that we've been seeing the last couple of weeks from him. And so it's a little bit scary. I've always thought that coming out of that draft, the most special tight end coming out of that draft was Mark Andrews, and that was because I thought that he stood a chance at being the most well-rounded, just overall high-performing guy. But there was no denying that Gesicki was special, and I didn't necessarily see special from Dallas Goedert or that Hurst guy, or what's the guy that the Ravens drafted in the first round who isn't really doing anything.
Jaden Hurst.
Yeah, I didn't really see special from him. But there's something you can't deny about Gesicki, and that he's special in a certain way, like in a very discrete way. And I guess he's so one-dimensional, though, that it's a matter of getting all the other stuff up to speed so that you can actually take advantage of his one dimension. But yeah, it's that, and that's happening. And if that does happen, then be prepared to see him highlight reels all over the place, because that's what he's built for. I mean, that's what he is.
Yeah,
so,
I hope that whatever quarterback comes in here next, watches this and realizes this is the guy that you have to trust.
Yeah,
with
you do.
Getting you the football, getting the football for you, because
that's right.
That's what's come about, because he is getting open, and he's running good routes and catching the ball cleanly and all of that. But look at the plays that he's making, because he's just bigger than everybody else.
He's and bigger, and he jumps higher, and
And yesterday he tried to clear a guy that was standing straight up.
And he just kneed him in the face. He needs to probably get that. As he gets older, he needs to probably get that out of his game, because he's going to get hurt that way. But I think that he's gonna be a pretty good player as they continue to figure him out. And it is key to trust him and figure it out. That's probably the most key thing, because of the way that he can make plays. But when it happens, especially what you're gonna see is when you get a really good quarterback in here and you start to get consistency at that quarterback position, to where that quarterback feels like he can learn him and start to develop patterns and rhythms and with his receivers, and get to know them and stuff like that. That you could really see him flower in that situation. So it'll be interesting. He's never going to be a complete guy. You know that.
No, he's not. He's not a wide tight end. He's
he's never. Yeah,
he's
you never know. Yeah, exactly. He's never going to be a complete
is what
guy.
I said today. When Omar Kelly today was asking, show me the next time that he inline blocks, and I wanted to respond, hopefully never. Right?
Well, show me the next time. Show me any time that Jimmy Graham inline blocked.
Right.
I mean, but Jimmy Graham is the guy that everybody knew. Right.
There's video on YouTube of people making fun of Zach Ertz blocking. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you could do that, but would you make fun of Zach Ertz, the football player? I don't think so.
Well, that's the thing that I kept trying to remind people coming out of the draft about Mike Gesicki, and even some people were going after Mark Andrews this way, and I was like, but they're not complete guys. They're not blocking and stuff like that. I was like, name me the last, aside from like Rob Gronkowski, who was unique and he's going to be in the Hall of Fame for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not the only good tight end that's existed over the last 10, 15 years. Name me, name me the elite tight ends, the really good tight ends that you know of out there. And then, show me their blocking reels and tell me it's not all a blooper reel. I mean, because that's just the fact. These tight ends don't become elite players and become the stars of the league because of their blocking ability. Just Rob Gronkowski. Otherwise, they're elite, or they get that reputation because of the plays they make in the passing game. And they often are just shit blockers. So, Gesicki is a shit blocker. We know that. We've always known that. But if he can make these kinds of plays in the passing game, ain't nobody going to care.
Yeah, now let's get into this because I saw this argument all day today, and it was mostly by one beat writer, but a lot of people were following through. There are 9 tight ends in the Hall of Fame, okay, and these are the guys. And I got a pretty good idea of who these guys are because I've always been a film junkie, and especially historic films. Dave Casper was one of the first. He was not a wide tight end. Okay. Mike Ditka, yeah, okay, sure. Tony Gonzalez, kind of, but not really. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was a basketball player.
Okay. Basically. John Mackey, complete.
I mean, literally.
Ozzie Newsome, complete. Charlie Sanders, I'd never watched him play, and I don't know too much about him. Jackie Smith, I know for a fact was not a wide tight end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Shannon Sharp and Kellen Winslow. Okay, that's it. That's the list. Now, Shannon Sharp, do you remember Shannon Sharp as some guy who was just bowling over linebackers?
No, he was a wide receiver, basically.
Okay, and Kellen Winslow was the same thing. Kellen Winslow wasn't a wide tight end either. That's why San Diego, if you could go back and you could go look at those old films of those Dan Fouts-led offenses, they used Charlie Joyner on the outside, and they had that other receiver, Wes Chandler. They had Kellen Winslow, and they used to always play another tight end or a fullback with him. Okay, and sometimes they used to play Kellen Winslow in the slot and what looked like back then as a 3 wide receiver set. And they used to comment on how Kellen Winslow was essentially a wide receiver. So this complete tight end thing, it doesn't happen. And if it does happen,
it's not often, right? No. I mean, it's Jason Witten and Rob Gronkowski, and that's the list. But then that's the list. That's it. That's the tweet. So otherwise you're looking at, because if you're looking at Jimmy Graham, what the hell was he as a blocker? I mean, he's basically just a wide receiver.
He's a giant wide receiver.
Yeah, if you look at what's his name, Antonio Gates, converted basketball player, didn't know what he was. He came into football. I remember him saying that he was still learning the game by playing Madden when he was in the NFL because he was he was that new. Yeah, I mean, you think about players like that, and Tony Gonzalez. These were not blockers. And then there's always somebody going to step up. They knew how to block. They could really,
yeah, okay,
really go slice up the reel and show it to me, because they had some shit blocks. And if you were asking them to stay in and block on passing downs, you're not doing yourselves any favors.
No.
So yeah, it's the complete tight end thing. It's really about developing the chemistry and the trust with the quarterback to use them and knowing that they can free themselves really in man coverage or in zone coverage. That's what it's all about. And Gesicki's getting there, and he, if that trust gets there, then it's highlight reel city. We know that he can do that. His very first training camp, that's what he did. All kinds of videos came out.
His first training camp, he was destroying Rashad Jones.
Yeah.
Okay. And making a fool out of Rashad Jones.
It's highlight reel after highlight reel. And now you have DeVante Parker doing what a game he had.
Yes. And let's transition to him. Let's transition to DeVante Parker, and let's at least have 3 minutes of DeVante Parker appreciation.
Yeah.
Okay.
He had a hell of a game.
I've always made this case. I have no problem with DeVante Parker, the football player. He's good. He's a good NFL wide receiver. My problem with DeVante Parker is what I've always said. To be good, you have to actually play. And he's always finding injuries and leaving the squad when you most need him, especially all those Dolphin teams that he was a part of, that he was supposed to be a big part of. And all of a sudden, you're losing your wide receiver for 2-3 weeks, or he's leaving games in the second quarter. And that's a guy you can't count on. And then in the offseason, he's not – I don't know how we would say this, but, he wasn't – not that he wasn't a happy camper, but he wasn't really partaking in what all the other pros, quote-unquote pros, were doing. Namely Kenny Stills, who one time had an Instagram post basically shaking his head because – DeVante was eating all kinds of junk food in the offseason. Okay? Evidently, he's taking this a little bit more seriously, and this is the year. I guess I think it was Joe Shad who said that it took, his football mortality for him to get it right. And I hope that's true. What do you make of it? Do you think that this is the light bulb that, he finally got threatened with unemployment? And that's why we're getting the DeVante Parker we've always expected?
No, I think it's a quarterback. I think it's Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't know. I mean, so it's the trust thing. It's a style thing. Ryan Tannehill was not. I don't think he was a trusting quarterback in a different way. I think for DeVante. So DeVante Parker, and this is the problem I primarily had with him. DeVante Parker doesn't really. I mean, he's not like Kenny Stills. He doesn't, or Jakeem Grant for that matter. He doesn't create a lot of separation, in my opinion. And a lot of these highlight passes that you're seeing out there are really just, go up and get it. And it's not that you're so open. It's that the ball is thrown either really well, depending on the type of throw that it is, either really well or sort of underthrown and then let the guy go up and get it really well if it's really over the shoulder, or just kind of an underthrow and then you're asking him to box out and go get it. It takes a lot of trust to throw those balls, and it takes a lot of chemistry, and I think there's a lot of chemistry that kept getting interrupted for the reasons you talked about. And so the trust wouldn't really develop. I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick is a guy that has always liked to throw it up to those taller guys. You go back to Mike Evans and what he had in Tampa Bay with Mike Evans and then O.J. Howard and some of those guys at Cameron Brate. And going back to the Jets, Brandon Marshall. And he had that guy Eric Decker as well. So yeah, I think that he's a guy that does that. I think the quarterback fits him. His mentality fits him. He's a gunslinger. Ryan Fitzpatrick is. It doesn't take much for him to start trusting you and just start throwing it up there to you, because that's in his nature. It was never in Ryan Tannehill's nature. So I think that's a big part of the issue. And so he's reaping the rewards off of that. But there is still some downside there in that there's going to be a consistency issue, because nobody consistently – the plays you saw against the Eagles this weekend – nobody finishes those plays consistently. The kind of plays that you saw. I mean, they're low percentage plays for a reason. Even the best ones, the guys that you think of, Julio Jones or Megatron, they didn't do that all the time. When you eat from those plays, it turns out inconsistent, and you can still disappear or end up disappointing, or a ball gets picked off or something like that. It's really going to be about separation and about the consistency of his getting separation, and also his run after catch, which has never been there. Not the way that it was in Louisville. I mean, you saw in Louisville, he would run drag routes. Yeah, he would run drag routes and then have this great run after catch. I always thought that there was some opportunism involved with those, that it wasn't that much skill. But certainly in Miami, his run after catch has not been good. And so I think that that's part of being a complete player here and really achieving your total potential is going to be that. It's going to be creating separation so that the quarterback trusts you more. And then adding in those big 50-50 plays every now and then that catch the highlight reels.
Yeah, and I had the stat earlier today on the 3YPC account, and he's just a guy that if you target 10 times or more, traditionally, he's always had good numbers. And it's not that it's an arbitrary number, because it's very rare that he gets targeted many more than 10 times, because he's been targeted 10 times, 11 twice, and 13 once, okay? And if you go less than 10, if you add on the 5 games where he was targeted 9 times, his numbers go through the roof. But he's the guy that either gets targeted 9 or 10 times, or 4 or 5. And his 4 or 5 target games are absolute garbage. And I think that's where he makes, where he's made his reputation. But if you put his 9 and 10 target games, and I use 10 targets because it's a nice round number. But if you want to use 9, if you want to add 9 in there, then his numbers are going to get better. But his 9 and 10 target games, good God, like I had the numbers today. Like if you extrapolate, you're talking about a 100 catch, 1,400 yard receiver. Like those are ridiculous numbers, and near 9 yards per target. Like, is that a good case to make, that he gets targeted, good things happen, that maybe this is a guy that needs to be featured a lot more?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but what about the drives that are ending because you're tired? If it's that up and down with him, you gotta target him 10 times to get like the 2 big plays or whatever. Then think about the drives that are ending because you kept trying to feed him the ball, you kept trying to get that big play out of him. Yeah. And then think about the consistency factor and how that affects, the flow of the game, that those drives ending, as well as the mentality and the way that, because football is sequential, right? So everything builds off of what you've already done. And yeah. I think that's why we talk about this consistency thing all the time. And how it sounds nice sometimes it sounds nice on paper, and you want to just go ahead and do it and like make a plan. Okay, well, you win if you run 25 times. So I'm going to run 25 times, but football is sequential. So, and everything is conditioned on what has already happened. So it doesn't always work out that way. And I think he does still have a ways to go, to be honest, but I give him all kinds of credit for this game, and he's had a pretty good season too altogether. He had a hell of a game. I mean, some of the plays that he made are the type that win you games, and he was the margin. He represented the margin in the game, and then some, I think.
Yeah, and I was doing a little bit of digging of this because Mike Ryan of the Lebitard Show, he's a Browns fan, and he was marveling how they have Jarvis Landry basically as their number 1 wide receiver still. And I did some digging, and sure enough, Odell Beckham with the Browns has been targeted 10 or more times, 4 times. He's been essentially ignored the rest of the season, okay?
Yep.
And every time he's targeted with those big numbers, here comes the 6 receptions for 161 and a touch. 6 receptions, 101 and a touch. You know what I mean? You see these big numbers, And, like, I don't know, how are the Browns better? With Jarvis Landry as the head target guy or Odell Beckham? I think the answer lies somewhere in between. I think, yeah, Parker needs his targets, but I think it has to be organic. And I think you're right. Like if it starts getting forced, then here come the picks, and you're not going to see as many. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not going to see as many highlight plays. So, yeah, I think it has to be organic. They have to find the balance next year. But at least they know that they have a guy that they can trust if they do throw it to him 10 times in a game. But it does have to happen organically. I don't think he's a feature guy. I don't think he's Julio Jones. I think he's that, he's that considerable step below what
Yeah.
we consider like that top 15 guys. You know what I mean?
He looks like Julio Jones in a game, right?
Yes.
In this game, because when you play that numbers game with those 50-50 balls in those situations where we saw him make the big plays in this game, you're going to come down with it in spurts, and they're going to work out. And when it does, it's going to look hella impressive. But
do you
then
think that maybe the staff, since it's a New England staff, and you know that their reputation is that they find matchups, could it be as simple as maybe next year they find like, hey man, we're playing this guy who's a 5'9" quarterback, a cornerback. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like maybe this game is a good idea to target DeVante 11, 12 times on this kid if we can. Kind of like what they did to Mills yesterday.
Well, they did it. Was it Mills so much as it was? I thought it looked like more like Ronald Darby.
No, it was more Mills, I believe.
I mean, in the first half and then some, it was definitely Ronald Darby. He was targeted 6 times on Darby, and he had 4 catches for 101 yards on Ronald Darby. So Mills, he had 3 catches for 58. And yeah, one of them was a touchdown. He had a touchdown on both guys, really. That 4th down play was Darby. And that 4th down play was just a ridiculous play. One of the most ridiculous plays that I've seen out of a Dolphin player in a while. It's going to be interesting going forward. I mean, hey, they've got, this is what they just did with Eric Rowe. They signed him to a 3-year extension worth $18 million, and $7 million of it is guaranteed. So essentially think of it as 2020 being a year where Eric Rowe is going to be on the roster no matter what. Injured, not injured, rain or shine, he's going to be on the roster. And then from there, he has to earn his 2nd and 3rd years, and because those are basically like team options. They did that with DeVante Parker on his 2-year contract. Essentially, they said, all right, we're going to guarantee you the 1 year, 2019, you're going to be on the roster. We're going to give you all kinds of opportunities and feature you and stuff like that. And then we own your upside for 2020. And that's what the situation they're in. They own him for a little bit less than $5 million. And that makes a hell of a tradable asset if you want to do that, pursue that route. So yeah, this is what they're doing with Eric Rowe now. Eric Rowe is a 26-year-old guy. He's 6'1" corner with a 4.37 speed. He was a former 2nd-round pick. He's still quite young. He's gone through clearly some injury issues early in his career, but that now he's got momentum after a position switch. So they own his upside. They own his upside going into 2021, 2022, those years, if he really continues on this arc and continues ascending. There's a lot of good to be said for taking that tack with some of your guys, some of your own guys that fit that profile. And they did it with DeVante Parker. They're doing it now with Eric Rowe. So it's going to be something to look forward to.
Yeah, we gave you plenty of Dolphin talk. All right. Later on this week, we're going to try to concentrate a little bit more on all these college prospects as they close out their college seasons. But till then.
Thanks for listening to 3 Yards Per Carry. You can subscribe via iTunes, on Podbean, or your usual podcast provider.